Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. If you have not watched the Netflix series Shadow and Bone, please take a pause, skip this episode, come back because we are going to be talking about it today with full on spoilers, full on everything. And I am super excited as my guest. I once again have Reina, and she is back to talk about Shadow
Yay!
and Bone with me because she's super excited about it and I'm super excited about it and was ready once she started being like, "Oh yeah, the show's coming on." And I'm like, "I don't know anything about this show or the books, but I'm going to watch it." So, Reina, welcome back.
Hello. I'm happy to be back.
I am super excited. You were promoting this show on your Twitter timeline for months on the upswing, before it started coming out. You're even like, "Hey, read the books." And I was like, "I don't have time, but I'll put them on my wish list."
Yep, yeah, I was like, I'm definitely trying to work hard to get this show a season 2, season 3, season 4, season XYZ because I want to see it all. So I'm promoting it to everyone I can.
Well, I stumbled. Well, let me just say, we're recording this in May. The episode's going to come out in June. But on my research today, just to get some information, I saw that Netflix is hoping for at least 4 seasons of this series. So crossing
crossing
fingers that we get that.
crossing all my fingers and toes for this.
Now, I stumbled across a quote before we get started, and it is from a website, so I want to give them full credit because I definitely didn't think of it, and it's from Pop Sugar, and their title of their article, which I really loved, was "Shadow and Bone is like all of your favorite fantasy shows, but better."
Yep, yep, love it.
As a person that watches a relatively high amount of fantasy shows, whether it be good fantasy shows, bad fantasy shows, shows that I cringe at, but struggled my way through on times. I have to say, Shadow and Bone legitimately is one of my favorite shows that I've watched in probably 5, 7 years in that genre. Like, I
Yay!
legitimately fell in love with it.
Yay! That makes me so happy to hear.
And as we wake our way through, because you set up the perfect flow, so we're gonna be flowing off of Reina, uh,
Cool.
and we got a lot of stuff that we're gonna cover. But as we go through it, I have my episode notes, and I didn't want to spoil any of them, but some of them are kind of quick thoughts of huh, oh, oh.
Oh.
We're gonna get into it. Shadow and Bone was written by Bard Leigh was written by Leigh Bardugo. I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Leigh.
Uh, Leigh Bardugo.
Yep.
Okay, Leigh Bardugo, and it's a bunch of books. There's I think it's what Shadow and Bone is 3 books, and then there's a sequel spinoff.
Duology. Yeah, there's the second two, it's a sequel duology, which is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. And then there's also a duology following that called King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. Rule of Wolves just came out in March. And so that's how many books there are as of right now. I'm sure she's got something plotted for the future, but I like it as is. So
Okay. Well, I know that a lot of people, and including yourself, have been sharing certain things on Twitter and Instagram, and I just want to say that as somebody who aspires to eventually write a book of some sort, the video that I saw of her meeting the cast for the first time as
hmm
them dressed in their outfits and on set was so very sweet and so very it brought tears to my eyes because I can imagine you've invested so much of your time and energy and passion into these characters, and then getting to see them like in person just has
yeah.
to be something.
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing because I also have like a story that I've been working on for years and years, and I was like when I saw that video, I was thinking I was like, gosh, that feeling that just to see these characters that you created in your head, now they are physical people who are hugging you, about to play your story like that. That I also wanted to tear up in that too. I was like, wow, that's a feeling. That is a feeling right there.
It definitely it and and not only that, but I imagine like seeing like the clothing and the
Mhm.
locations and just seeing that all come to life because I'm the and we're going to talk about it. I'm jumping ahead, so I'm going to rein myself back in. I'm reining myself back in. Now we're going to talk about to start with the overall review thoughts of the show. And I know that you've read the books, and that's a whole nother topic coming up.
Mhm.
But you got 8 episodes, which shocking. Like I was surprised it was only 8, but
Yeah.
it was a solid 8. It wasn't like there wasn't a filler episode to be had. There wasn't
Mhm.
any episode where I was like, okay, it's 20 or 30 minutes of just meh.
Yeah,
But
like twiddle
we're
your
getting
thumbs a
through
little
it.
bit. Yeah.
So what did you think? What would you say is your like overall thoughts on Shadow and Bone?
So overall thoughts are that I feel like I almost shortchanged it beforehand. I didn't give it enough credit before I saw it, and because of that, it really did exceed my expectations. Because I was just really I was just so confused as to how some plots were gonna work. I was like, I don't know how they can make this work, but I'm here with you guys. Like I'll see what it looks like. I'm not gonna be too judgy beforehand, but there were some things I was like, I don't know how that's gonna work. I don't know how they're gonna do that. But they shut me up, and I've been very happy to be shut up. Like I very much enjoyed it. I objectively enjoyed it, which is something I've been saying a lot. Where I'm like, okay, I this is a show that if I wasn't already a fan of the books, which is something I can get into later too. If I wasn't already a fan of the books, I would actually enjoy this show as is. It was a lot of fun. It didn't take itself too seriously, but it did when it needed to. I was just very happy with it. Also, the rewatchability on it has been surprisingly great. Like I actually just finished my fourth rewatch this morning, and it still holds up. I'm like, usually by now I'm like a little bit okay, what's whatever. The joke's not as funny anymore, but it is. And so I really appreciate that it's good popcorn. Like it's I can I can eat it whenever I want to, and it's still good. So I was very pleasantly surprised at how well it came together. So I am now happily pushing for people to watch it without any kind of disclaimer. Be like, okay, watch it, guys, but it kind of sucks. No, watch it, and it's actually good. So that's my that's my overall review of it.
Well, I have to say, I broke my viewing up into the first four and then the second four, which I kind of wish I hadn't have done that because the fourth episode is like one of those linchpin episodes of, oh my gosh, what's going on? In fact, my notes are the heist awesomeness. I need more info on the trio, which as they're the crows. I need more info on
Hmm.
that. And then I'm like, in capital letters, Milo the goat. And like I told you, my notes are just like that, like Milo the goat, and that's it.
Yes, best goat ever. I love him.
The goatest of the goats.
The goatess of the goat, the goat. Yes,
He is the goat. The goat is
yes,
Milo.
yes, yes. That was such a fun addition to the show.
Oh yes, definitely. Now, as far as me, I've only watched it the one time, and I blame a number of reasons for that, but it's on my list to watch again. And honest to goodness, when I watched it, I enjoyed probably a good 75, 80% of the story to begin with.
Mhm.
There was definitely a storyline that I thought was really weak, and I was like, "Oh gosh, we're back to them again." And I felt bad saying it because it wasn't it wasn't as entertaining. It felt like you're taking me away from like you have Alina and Mal and their story
Mhm.
going on, and you have the crows and what's going on. But then all of a sudden, like you're on this like random person, Nina, I believe. You're on Nina and you're on Matthias Helver,
Matthias.
the Fjorden, the
Mhm.
Driscoll, and you're on them like, and it's like totally separated, totally like they had mentioned her to begin with, and then they like she's like kidnapped and everything, and it took me out, but it finally near the end like started being like okay, like
Mhm.
I'm more interested. I'm more interested, especially about like the relationship that started blossoming from it, and I was
Mhm.
getting into it. But like the first like 4 or 5 episodes, I had no care. I was like, get me back to the main thing. I need the main story going on because there's just so much to see and take in, whether it's at the little palace or whether it's at
Mhm.
like in Ravka or where at like wherever the crows are finding themselves. It's like I need more of this.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. No, I totally understand. I think so. One thing with Nina and Matthias, for example, is that that was definitely one of the plots that I agree with a lot of people too, because we're all kind of saying like that one felt a little bit more disconnected than the rest of it, and it's also probably due a lot to the fact that that's one of the storylines that remain almost exactly intact from the books too. Whereas Alina's story and the Crow's story kind of had to shift a little bit. The Crows more than Alina, of course, but had to shift a little bit from the book counterparts because they're combined. But Nina and Matthias, their story was almost identical to how it is in the books. One thing that still kept me excited on their storyline is because I know where they're going to end up
Hmm.
because they are, five or two of the six crows. So that's where I was just like, I think that is what helped me stay engaged in their story. But I can see how people who don't know the Six of Crows hype would not be as engaged in these future crows backstory when
Hmm.
it's so disconnected from what the other three crows are doing with the main plot. So I think that one's one that I wish they would have tied together a little bit better with the main plot, but like hopefully comes together a little bit more in the end, like you said. So that's my 2 cents on Hell Nick is what their ship is called. Yep, yep.
The next part that we're gonna talk about is favorite characters and moments. And again, I have to say, like, I know that this is like the Alina and Mal show because that's really who you focused on a lot, but then you'd focus on some other characters. And I just want to throw it out there. I fell in love with Jesper and I fell in love with Inej.
Mhm.
Like those were my two main, but I have to say that when we finally get to the little palace, I loved Jenya as well. I
Oh
thought
yes.
her character, as far as like her background, the way that she works her like magic or the what she
Mhm.
does
Taylor.
is real
Yep.
as a tailor. I loved her outfit, the white
Mhm.
with her red hair was just so I don't have words for it. I wrote down that I loved her outfit and I was like I really did. I loved her. I loved whenever she got to pop up. But for the love of everything, Jesper and Inej stole my heart.
Yes. Oh, my babies. Yeah, you literally mentioned like three of my faves. I love Jinya. Like of all the trilogy, first trilogy characters, of the ones like there's one character that comes in later on that I really like, but my second favorite behind him is Jinya, hands down. She is like she's got such a rich story arc. Not to spoil anything, but like her story arc is so good and so tragic in ways that you're just like, oh my gosh, I just want to hug you type of deals. But like Jing is one of my favorites. Definitely my favorite of the Grisha characters. But my crows stole my heart. No crime pun intended. But like they stole my heart so much. It was so funny just seeing them. You're like, oh my gosh, these are the people I read. Like this is this is literally them. Like it's scary how similar they are to their book counterparts. Those three in particular. It was just loved watch. I just loved watching them, and Jesper especially just exceeded my expectations, like the rest of the show. But like he was such a scene stealer. I love him. Kit Young knocked it out the park with that.
He absolutely did. I'm gonna read some notes as I was watching.
Yeah.
Um, I said I like Inej and Jesper as a team. I dig those two together. I said Jesper is a badass with a goat. And then so the one thing I was like, Jesper, gay? Question mark. And then capital letters like 5 seconds later. Yup.
Yeah, so
And
he's and that's actually in the book. He's bisexual. And like I'm glad they kept that part of his character in it too. Very I love Jesper. I just love Jesper a lot. I could say that all day.
I loved it. I love the characters. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. I'm shocked that Jesper can't take having the sewing to for injuries.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, that's something interesting. Like you can shoot a gun and shoot people, but you
Yeah.
can't take that.
Yeah, I mean I was pretty squeamish on that too. And I was just like, "Oh, okay." Ugh. But yeah, that was he's so just layered. He's got so much going on in Little Jesper Land that like I don't want to spoil the books, but like he's got so much going on.
And then when they're in the little palace, I did write, damn Manej taking the knife back, like because she had stabbed uh one of the Grisha with the knife, and she's like, oh, you can make it if
Mhm.
I just leave the knife in, and then she's like, oh, taking it back.
Yep, yep. And Amita Suman, who plays Inej, did such a just an overall beautiful job. But like there was like that moment after she stabbed her, saying that like super awesome line, but you could see that like, oh my gosh, I killed someone again
Hmm.
moment in her face, and it was so perfect with her character because it's like she doesn't want to kill, and yeah, she just had this like badass line that she just dropped this lady on, but she felt that like, oh no moment, and that was so brilliant on Amita's part to play it like that too. Oh, I'm just gonna keep saying I love them.
Now, I'm not familiar with with the main storyline as far as the books go. And we clearly had like Ravka is pretty much like the main area that we were in.
Mhm.
Um, I'm trying to remember the city name where Kaz and Inej in Ketterdam, which
Ketterdam. Mhm.
now is Ketterdam, is that in that's in West Ravka, right?
No, so Ketterdam is actually in an island country called Kerch,
Okay.
and so basically you have Rafka, which is this universe's Russia, Eastern Europe. You have Shuhan, which is East Asia, Fjerda, which is Scandinavia, and Novia Zem, which is Australia.
Okay.
And Kerch is more like the Netherlands or Germany. And that's where the crows are. They just travel to Ravka to get the prize and then go back and get their Kruga and
Right.
change their lives.
Well, I wanted to mention that because I didn't know the locations of places, because a lot of the conversation, especially on Instagram and the people that I follow, a lot of that are into Shadow and Bone, has been that they are loving that Alina was cast as half Shu, or half Asian, and in the show, there's a lot of racism towards Shu. Like it's automatic. Like, oh, you're not part of this. You need to go back to the back of the line, or get out of here. And it's like through her entire life. And that's, and, she's in the Ravkan military. She grew up as Ravkan, and I know that a lot of people that I follow on Instagram were like, I love that it's representation, that there's a character again, that there is that character that looks like me, and I can identify with that character. And I'm glad that even though they're portraying it, and with the racism, like it's legitimate, like straight up, that's how sometimes they feel, like in especially within recent months and like the past year or so in the States here. So I really like that they did that. I know that her character wasn't in the books, or wasn't specifically mentioned. I'm not too familiar with it, but I know that they
Yeah.
made that character choice, and I really dug that they did that with the character, to just add another layer to it.
Yeah. Yeah, because in the books she's just Ravkan. And it's the presumption is she's just white. I think Leigh Bardugo said that also. And so yeah, so having them add that, especially with Jessie May Lee as Alina, was, I think, really really powerful in terms of representation and everything. And it's funny, I think that I understood the impact of that most when I was listening to a behind the scenes podcast about Shadow and Bone, with, I think she's one of the writers on the show, and I wish I remembered her name. But she's half Japanese, if I recall, and she was saying that it was so important for her to add that in, because it was this whole same idea of the World War II era, with against Japanese, with the "you look like the enemy" type of
Hmm.
deal. And like, I think that's when it really, and she was like tearing up when she was talking about it. And I think that's when it really hit me, just how poignant that was, when she was just like saying like that's her life. Like, like, you like, that was her, that was, culturally, historically, that's what a lot of, especially Japanese Americans or East Asian Americans in general, would deal with. But now, especially now, like, with all this absolute madness against Asians, and like hearing her talk about that, I was just like, wow, okay, yeah, I see that, and it hurt my heart, but warmed my heart that people get to now say, like, yes, this character, this strong, powerful character, looks like me.
Hmm.
And all the stuff she's going through, I go through it too, and she's overcoming it, and so that, I think that was really really good to hear somebody of the same racial makeup as Alina in the show. I think that was really really good to hear that from her. And I'm going to look up her name, and I'm going to message you later on to add her in. But her commentary was just really spot on and poignant to me in terms of representation.
Absolutely. And I like that the show doesn't stray away from it. It absolutely could have. It absolutely could have been a show almost. I'm not going to name any other fantasy shows,
Mhm.
but there's definitely been shows where it's like, where is all the color? And with Shadow and Bone, you didn't feel that. It's just
Mhm.
natural. Like everyone's there.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and I really loved, especially with the crows, that you uh, I'm going to focus on them just because I love them so much. But
Yay.
it's just, you have Kaz, but then you have Inej and Jesper, and
Mhm.
they're totally different backgrounds, and you're like, okay, like I love it. And I think it's more of like, not only do I love it, but I want more. Like I need to know more about
Yeah.
them, where they grew up, the religion that they fought, like everything, like all of that. And that's what I love about this show. And
Mhm.
it makes me want to read the books, is to get that lore and get that information and find out more about like the setting that they're in and everything that's connected to it.
Yeah, like, and like with the crows, with those three crows in particular, like it's so wonderful because like you have the racial diversity with Jesper and Inej, but you also have Kaz as their leader and he's disabled. And so you got a disabled leader, a brown girl, a black guy, like it's just put them all together and they are this amazing force. Like, and it's so refreshing. And that's another reason why I love Six of Crows too so much, is because that you get a lot of that in the books too. They don't shy away from that in Six of Crows, which is really nice.
One of the things that we were going to talk about is like favorite moments of the show.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, like episode 4 again, I called it like the linchpin episode. Like they had an awesome
Mm-hmm.
heist,
Mm-hmm.
awesome stuff going on there. But then the whole like tail end of it, I wrote like in episode 6, like, oh shit, the alarm found our trio. And then like they're separate, they're separate like interactions with the Grisha that were following them, and how
Mm-hmm.
they all kind of like paired off with a different person that was going after them, and seeing the ways that they dealt individually with them was
Mm-hmm.
just, I like, because you've seen them work together, and dang if they can't like just hold up their own end individually as well. And I think that those, like, whenever the crows are around, were my favorite moments. Like whatever
Yep.
they were getting into, whether it was like just talking to somebody. I loved, I did like, oh gosh, the conductor,
Oh yeah,
Arkin, right? And I was
Arkin.
like, I wrote pretty neat guy with lots of things slowly revealed about him. And then later I was like, oh, never mind.
Oh.
They like totally played him.
It's like, oh, he's actually kind of nasty. Never mind. Just kidding. Yeah, that was so cool. Like I think, yeah, anytime the crows were on, of course, that's where I'm at. Like I'm like, I just think they were so brilliantly played, but also like they're my favorite characters because because like you said, like they're so individual. The way they're fleshed out is so rich, and they could depend on they're independent and dependent. Like they work as like a great triangle, but also can work on their own in different ways. And it's just I love that balance that they have with each other. And probably like one of my favorite moments was actually the when there was the heist part. I think it was episode 4, 3 or 4, something like that. When they were doing getting the map from stealing the map from the palace. I should remember this better than I can, but basically the heist that they
Right.
did, where they had the individual little shots of what they were doing. I thought that was so perfect. And anyone that that's interested in Six of Crows, like that one scene, that one sequence was like a perfect example of that entire series. Like that was through and through Six of Crows, um, in a nutshell, because it was just so, it was so perfectly like Money Heist, Ocean's 11, and you can see their individual skills. So that's probably like one of my favorite moments, just because it was such a nod to how they are in the books too, and it was it was it was so fun. It was like, oh my gosh, this is what it'll look like when they adapt Six of Crows. Like, yes, I'm so excited.
Now you lead us right into our next topic, which you're going to have to do the heavy lifting. I already told you that though, which
Yep.
is show versus books. Obviously, we as a you and me, we have dealt with a certain series and their book representation or lack of
Hmm.
or whatnot. But with this, how do you feel? How do you feel it did? Where did it go right? Where did it go wrong? If it did, like, what are your thoughts?
So it's funny, like I said, overall, I think they did a really good job adapting. Um, I will say that they incorporated the Six of Crows plot a lot better than I thought they would. Because like Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows are just such drastically different books in tone. And so that's one of the things I was worried about. I was like, I don't know how they're gonna do this, because it's like it's literally would be like combining The Witcher and Ocean's 11. Like, you're just like, wait, how? So I was concerned about that at first. There was also like some characterization that I was thinking, for example, Mal, and I'm so sorry to to book fans out there who are huge fans of him. I hated him so much in the books. I could not, I could barely get through the second book because I was just so appalled at his characterization in the books. He was he was so unlikable to me, and not in a fictional way like the Darkling, where he's just like, ah, this guy's a douchebag because he killed a whole city with his magical shadow powers. Like, I'm not gonna really, I'm not gonna, encounter that too much in real life. But Mal in the books was like real life douchebag. Like, I'm like, not only do I not like guys like him, I know guys like him. He's awful in the books, in the first two at least. In the third one, he came around. Like, I feel like Leigh Bardugo realized that people were supposed to like him. But like, but like, he was all the worst parts of Gail Hawthorne and Jacob Black, and just like, it just, ah, man, I hated him in the books. The show, on the other hand, I feel like maybe they had to come to Jesus with Leigh, where they were like, we need to make him good, and they did a really good job. I have to say, like, they did a really good job with Mal's characterization. I liked him. I liked him a lot. And also, like, huge props to Archie Renault on that, because he added so much heart to him, even deeper than the lines. Because there were a lot of lines that were changed, and a lot of, like, plot points of his that were changed from the story. And I appreciated that they did that, because it needed to happen, because there are a lot of fans who do not like Mal for one reason or another, and we need to like him. And I feel like, I really did like him in the show. Alina, I liked that she had a lot more uh spunk, spark, a little bit more like, I don't know, something about her in the show was a little bit more tangible than in the books. And I really liked that too. The Darkling, Alexander, had a lot. He was better fleshed out. Like, he was more layered in the show, and I also really liked that too, because I keep on saying I like that. But I really appreciated that they added more layers to him. He's not this like mustache twirling bad guy all of a sudden. It's just like, wow, I'm gonna kill the people. Like, it's like, okay, well, that's not that interesting. But we get more of a sense of him, so that, especially when we got his backstory in episode 7, that's kind of hinted at a little bit in the books, but since the books, the Shadow and Bone trilogy is first person POV, then we only get Alina's version side of anything. So you've got characters like Mal who are awful because we only hear Alina's. We're not in his head, and you have like these people like the Darkling who are just like mustache swirling awful, and you're like, okay, well, what's your deal, dude? Like, bruh, what is going on? And the show showed us is that, well, he was actually tried to reason with non-Grisha, and they were killing him left and right. And so you don't necessarily agree with his methods, but you understand what caused the madness, basically. And I like that a lot that they did that. As far as the crows, like, they were just fine as is in the books, and the show really got spoiled with how they were in the show. And it's with Kaz specifically. So something about the Six of Crows duology is that they unlike the trilogy, they're all multi POV books, and so we're inside of Kaz's head a lot. And some people were like, "Oh, well, he's a lot softer in the show than he is in the books." I'm like, no, but at the same time, it's because we're not in his head, and we don't see like how he is upstairs. Like we see like he's got this really hard, I don't care exterior. And so like, when he says things in the show, like directly says things in the show, especially to Inej, you're like, if you're not thinking, you're like, oh, Kaz wouldn't say that. But then if you got to think about it, you're like, no, Kaz would say that. He just only says that in his head, and the show's not going to be in his head. So we need him to physically say it, or a lot of people aren't going to like him.
Right.
And Freddie Carter, I keep saying this, but Freddie Carter just embodied everything about Kaz so beautifully. His backstory is one of the saddest, and it's caused him so much trauma that they haven't even really touched on in the story, in the show yet. But when if you know the trauma, there are these little moments where Freddie played it that you're like, there it is. There that is. Oh my gosh, like that's right there. So in terms of book versus show, like even the differences that the Crows had, it was perfect in the show still, because you still see they still kept the essence of the Crows, all 5 of them, because we are not at the 6th Crow yet. That's Wylan, and I love him. But I think in terms of the plot too, I was very happy with how they integrated the 2 books, because like I think Shadow and Bone as a book needed some other POV's layer to add to it, because like there were times in the book where Alina's at the little palace and she's kind of just training, and those will be like the twiddle your thumbs episodes that they would have just kept that plot as is. The way that the Crows were integrated into the story really benefited both storylines, especially Alina's storyline, where it adds this extra layer of like, well, there's more going on in the plot than just this now super powerful girl is learning how to use her powers and has like a whole training montage that drags a little bit, which it didn't in the show, but it does in the books a little bit sometimes. And that was really smart, I think, to add them. I was not on board when I first heard they were combining them, but I was like, okay, I get it. I get what you guys are doing now. So yeah, I don't know that there was necessarily. I will say one character I feel like the show missed the mark on a little bit, at least in the beginning, was Zoya.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the books, she's a mean girl in the books, and that's true. In the first book, I don't want to say books plural. She does come around. But like them making her romantically involved with the Darkling was like a real cheap shot at Zoya's character because it wasn't like that in the books. Like she just she to be the Darkling's favorite was just like this point of esteem, and it wasn't. You didn't have to want to sleep with him, even though it's Ben Barnes. Like I understand, but you didn't that didn't have to be the reason why someone would be another Grisha would be jealous of Alina being so close with him because he's just like it doesn't matter if he's pretty or not. That's the Darkling. He's the one. And so like I feel like that was really unnecessary for them to add that as a reason why she's like snappy. It was petty. I feel like and in the books it's actually Mal that she has a thing with, and so it was one of those things where you're like, okay, how many times can this girl get scorned by the same because of the same chick? Like it was
Right.
it was a little bit of a cheap shot having her romantic with the Darkling at any point. But I did appreciate how they came around with her character at the end because she doesn't in the book she doesn't really make that turnaround until about like the end of the second book. So I like that they're more on the path to the like okay, she's going to shed her mean girl ways and just be this really cool powerful woman. They're getting started on that early, which I'm glad they did because otherwise they kind of did mess up her character a lot. Very sorry to Zoya Noslinsky stands because that was not the move in the show. That was a misstep in the show, I will say. But yeah, in terms of like I said with Nina and Matthias, their plot, I loved their plot again because I knew, but I can see how their plot was so disconnected from the others that you're just like, okay, when's it gonna circle back to the main plot? It doesn't because it's so much. It's from the Six of Crows plot, and so that's why it stuck out like a sore thumb. It's because it is almost word for word at some parts, like the Six of Crows plot. So I'm just like, okay, guys, maybe try and integrate them a little bit better next time, which is what they seem to be doing by the end of it. So that was nice.
Right. That was like that end part. I was like, oh, they're almost all together. Like,
Yes.
yay.
Like, okay, we have five on the same boat. One of them's in shackles, but that's okay. It's like there were five of crows on the same boat.
One of the topics you want to talk about was actor praise. I know, we've mentioned a number of the actors, Freddie Carter, who plays Kaz, Amita Suman, Inej, Kit Young as Jesper,
Mm-hmm.
Jessie May Lee as Alina. Do you have more, like, because I know I feel like we've talked a lot about them, but is there anyone specific you want to call out, or just be like you love them, they're great, they're awesome?
Like, I genuinely think that there's not one person on the cast that I was just like, not you. But like, I appreciated a lot of what Ben Barnes brought to the Darkling, or General Kerrigan. They changed his name in the show, but Alexander. I like what he brought to it because if you listen to him in interviews, like he even says that the Darkling wasn't that fleshed out in the books, and there's a lot that he played with in like these subtle moments where you get a sense that he didn't necessarily, he wasn't just using Alina in a superficial way. Like he did actually genuinely care about her. And I think that was something that was missing from the books, where like it was like he seemed to kind of care about her, but then oops, just kidding, no, he never did. And I liked that it was a little bit more, it was subtle but more obvious that he did genuinely care about finding his equal, not just causing her problems on purpose. And so like he did genuinely have care for her. And I think, and a lot of that I do attribute to Ben, because he says a lot in interviews, like, I wanted to add this, I wanted to try this. And that was something I really liked about his portrayal. And then, uh, just, again, like, I just can't stop singing the praises of the Crows actors. Like, I know that this episode is basically going to be like Reina cries about Six of Crows for an hour, and that's just how she is. But like, it's true though. But like, it was one, you could tell every actor not only read the books, but they loved their characters. Like, they genuinely, truly were hardcore fans of their characters, and that showed so much with all of them, Crows and trilogy actors, because you can see their fandom in their performances. They all read the books on all of them, and like, you don't always see that in some other fantasy shows that won't be named. But like, you get to the point where you're like, okay, I feel like you're not portraying this character as they are. Like, I feel like you like this version of this character that doesn't actually exist. But like, these actors, this whole cast really read these books and said, I don't want to change these books for the worse. Like, I don't want to play a one-dimension version of this character. Like, I want to add everything, every nuance about them into my performance. And it showed. So I love the cast for being fans, because that helps us fans see them and be like, yes, my favorite character is in good hands. My favorite ship is in good hands, XYZ. So kudos to the whole Shadow and Bone cast on that one.
Absolutely. And look at you setting up our next topic. Like,
Shit.
Reina, why am I the host of a podcast when you do so well with like just like being like, here, this is where we're headed next, because you're like, all the ships, here we go. And unlike one episode where I thought the person actually wanted to talk about ships because we were talking about Battlestar Galactica, I totally understand that we're talking about ships like relationships.
Oh man.
So what are your ships? Like, who do you ship?
Woof. Oh my goodness. Okay, so my top tier ship, and I will say this ship transcends not only Grishaverse, but also just in general, one of my top fictional ships ever is Kaz and Inej. Honestly, one of the best written ships I've ever seen, ever, because they just have such a beautiful connection. Like, it's so intense, but it's also subtle, and like, you get that sense that like they're willing to sacrifice so much for each other, but they're also individuals. Like, they're not parasitic towards each other, which is a curse that a lot of, especially young adult novel books, will fall into, in that trope, where it starts feeling like one's being a little bit parasitic to the other, and you're like, okay, you should probably go find your own hobbies. But Kaz and Inej are, like, without spoiling the backstories too much, are just, they have these traumas that they handle in such different ways, but like, they are also each other's missing piece in how they handle it, but without like, Kaz or Inej needs to fix Kaz. Like, that's not how their relationship functions. It functions more of like Kaz saying, I recognize that this is holding me back, and I want to be better for her. That's something he genuinely does say in the book. He's like, I want to be what she deserves, and she even says, like, I want better for you, but I need to handle my own thing, and I can't save you, but I'm here for you. And that's such an important, I think that's such an important relationship to have portrayed, because it's not this whole like, bad boy, I can fix him type of thing, or bad boy's going to solve my trauma past. Like, no, they have their own goals. they have what they want, what what they need, and it's not necessarily each other, but they love each other. And if that makes any sense, like it's just such a beautifully written pairing, and I cannot wait for everyone to read Six of Crows because and Crooked Kingdom, because the way they are is so unique and so beautiful. And I just can't say enough how well Freddie Carter and Amita Suman just got it. They got it. They're huge fans of the ship in general, and they just nailed it on the show. So Kenej is obviously my god tier ship. Um, and then there's a ship. I don't actually, oddly enough, I don't really have any ships with the trilogy as much. I wasn't, full disclosure, I wasn't like a fan of most of the pairings in the trilogy. I feel like Leigh Bardugo definitely learns a lot by in terms of relationships, um, writing them by Six of Crows, because I just didn't really connect with any of the ships as they were in the books.
And I just have to say, Jesper and Milo are the
Oh,
best. And
obviously.
in fact, I wrote in my notes. Okay, so I wrote in my notes because obviously Milo is the goat, and we've already talked about Milo being the goat. Like, we didn't even mention that Milo saved Mal.
Yep.
Like all of a sudden, there's Milo like strolling up and being
Yep.
like, "Here I am, and I'm gonna save you."
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Like.
and I know that I am a ridiculous person, but I would love if like Milo just kept showing up like
I
at random
know.
places.
Yeah, I feel like that was one of those things where Milo, I would absolutely love if he kept popping up, because he was such a weird and quirky addition that just worked. Like, now he's got this cult following and he's perfect. And I love him. I'm like, I know the cast is just always just like, it was very hard to work with the goat. Be like, I'm sure. But Milo was excellent. So could you bring him back more often? Thank you.
We're going to talk about like overall critiques, and I do want to mention they nailed the costuming, right? They
Yeah.
nailed that. They nailed the settings and the places, the things that really mattered, like the actual like location shots, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. I wrote in my notes and I said the little palace looks so CGI bleh. Like, I don't know what they were doing or going for, but it didn't look anything that could have been created in 2021. I don't know where they went to get like that image or what they were shooting, because that CGI has been probably one of the worst things I've seen in years.
And you know what's funny too, like with the little palace, the majority of it is a real building. But like, I'm just like, you guys could have just used like the whole building. They used a lot of like real sets with that, but I'm like, I feel like some of the CGI, I'm like, maybe work on that next in the hypothetical next season, because I feel like, yeah, there were some parts I was just like, that's a green screen, that's for sure a green screen. But yeah, like a lot of the parts of the Little Palace were actually real, oddly enough, and I was just like, huh, okay.
And I do want to mention the other thing, which is the timing, right? So
Mhm.
Mal finds the stag. Okay, Mal eventually gets to Alina, and they hook up like during episode 6, right? So
Mhm.
they're together, and then all of a sudden, like there's no like passage of time. It's like, here we are back where the stag is, and it's like, what
Yeah.
how did you get from where you were to where the stag is, like, in that
Yeah.
time? Like, that
Yeah.
time frame does not work for me.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I was just like, I was like, okay, I know they were like north-ish in Ravka, but like I don't know that they were so close to the Fjerden border, which is like the northern border. I don't know that they were that close that it could have been like, you could get there easily on foot, like that easily on foot. Especially, that the Darkling got there almost the same time and they had a head start almost. That was like kind of weird timing. I was like, I don't know that you can necessarily walk that close to Fjerda on foot. Also having to hide through woods. Like I feel like I wish I would have like specified a little bit more on how close those woods were to the northern border, because I feel like that maybe would have, if they were
Hmm.
closer, that maybe would have solved some problems. But like I don't know. Yeah, that was a weird thing because I actually just saw that episode today. I was like, huh, Florida's not that close. Like I'm like they have to like trace the fold all the way up. Yeah, that was weird timing too. Yeah.
And the one last thing I'll mention, because it happened with another Netflix series, The Witcher,
Mhm.
which again I've not played the games or read the books that The Witcher is based off of.
Mhm.
But what Netflix did, or maybe it wasn't Netflix, maybe it's somebody else, and it became popular, was it showed like they released a map of the area, and then they connected like what episodes take place in the different areas, so you could kind of follow along with like where the characters were traveling and what the area like looked like. And I'd love a map, and I'd love to be like, oh, this is where Ravka is. This is where the Fold is. This is where Little Palace is. This is where Keter. I I would love something of that nature, just to be like, okay, I get it, because there were like I'd written down questions of how does trade work between West Ravka and East Ravka? Do they have to go around? Do they send it through the Fold? How dangerous is it to go through the Fold? How big is the
Mhm.
Fold? Like all these questions I have, I just give me a map. Like I need a map.
Yeah. So they released this website after the series that they have an interactive map that like walks you through everything.
Oh,
Um
snap.
yeah, yeah, it's really cool, but I'm just like that's something that could have been good to have ahead of time too. Like they should have released that before the series. But because I feel like they were banking on a lot of book fans, because in the books, like in the front covers of the books, they have maps of everything. And so like in turn, like you get a better sense of how everything works in that respect. But it's one of those things where you're like, okay, that was really smart marketing for them to release the website and with all that stuff on it. But people who weren't familiar with the series before probably could have used that ahead of time just to really get a good sense of everything. Then I know they made like some social media posts about it too, but that's again people who are already following Shadow and Bone. So there was a lot of really good marketing done in hindsight. You're like
Hmm.
you're like that I feel like could have gone ahead of time. We have a whole thing with their marketing strategy was just that's why we were going so hard for it before the show came out, because the marketing teams were not. So that makes perfect sense that they fumbled on that clarity until after the show was out. So that I understand that critique.
What critiques do you have? What's some of the standout ones where you're like, this didn't work, or
hmm
I didn't like that? What do you have?
So kind of piggybacking on Mal and Alina, and I hate to sound like I'm picking on them. I'm really not. Um, but like it was one of those things where in the first few episodes, I can see that they understood the the backlash that Malina in the books has. Like a lot of like again like a lot of fans are just really about it. And so like it felt like a lot of their interactions were kind of retconning their book shortfalls, which was working really well in the beginning. But they kind of overdid it. I will say they like oversaturated the ship by the end and made them just like really codependent. Um, and in a way that like it again it's better than the books, but it was still it was kind of beating a dead horse by the end, where I kind of got like a little bit bored with the pair. And that's supposed to be like the main pairing, but like
Mm-hmm.
once all the other pairs started really, showing up and showing out, like Malena just wasn't that interesting anymore by the end. And then again, all those freaking metal flashbacks, I could not believe. I was just like, that's another one. There's another one. Like how many times? And so and I've been seeing that a lot too in terms of like the critiques. And so I got the sense that they were trying really hard to push for this main pairing to be better. And so much so that they oversaturated it and overdid it. So that would be my critique. Be like, okay, look, we get it. Okay, we get it. Let's chill. Just let's focus on the plot again, because Alina's plot started becoming more about I have to get back to Mal. I have to get back to Mal. I'm just like, okay, that's fine, but like, can again, like I said before, like what are your hobbies? Like what do you want to do for fun other than hang out with Mal? Like they made her wanting to leave the little palace just about Mal. Not so much about like I'm deathly terrified of these powers I have and the responsibility I have to be a part of these people that I don't feel like I'm a part of. And so I feel like by the end, they made her story so much more about Mal than herself that I didn't like. And I didn't like that much in the books either, but like I was hoping that they were going to change that more in the show. Again, like Zoya's characterization, so sorry to her fans. Like, look, I'm pretty like neutral on her as a character, but she was not done well, and not that's not a knock at her actress per se, but it's just her writing wasn't done well
Mm-hmm.
in the show until like the last hour. So I hope whatever they decide to do with that plot, they remember, be like, okay, we actually have to make people like her more. We want people to like her, so let's just keep that going. But yeah, yeah, those are my two of my main ones. But also, again, like I wish they would have spent more time with Nina and Matthias, because there was like a little bit of confusion on how like Nina's connected to the Darkling, because that's a new addition. And I feel like that was like a little bit lost in transit and translation, because Nina and Matthias aren't a part of the main six characters in the
Mm-hmm.
show. And I feel like they could have done better to utilize them a little bit more in terms of connecting their story, because in the books, like it's just like Nina, like because of like the timelines too, like Six of Crows, the books start like a few years after the last trilogy book, so they're not even in the same zone. But Nina's interaction with the Darkling was brief and not good. So it was like kind of unexplained to me, her connection in the show to the Darkling and why he was sending people to go look for her and stuff like that. I was like, okay, I half get it, but like not enough that I would understand why it warrants a separate plot. So I wish they would have spent more time connecting that more, like fewer Meadow scenes, more Nina and Matthias scenes would have
Mm-hmm.
been
Absolutely.
good. Yeah, like what that would have really been that like icing on the cake there. And then I think that like I think that other than that, I can't pinpoint anything specifically, but those were just like my main thoughts of what I would have changed. And like I definitely think that this is something that it's not so impeding on my enjoyment that I'm like, oh my god, I can't obviously I can rewatch it. But like it wasn't so impeding, but it was definitely like some of those like I was like with Melina, I was connecting with them until they overdid it, and I wasn't. Zoya, I wasn't connecting with her until in the last second. Oh, I mean, just kidding, I am. And then like I didn't understand. If I didn't understand Nina, I wouldn't have understood Nina. is basically like my takeaway from that. So yeah, like there's some ironing out that they need to do, and also to like I do appreciate that they use where they use their CGI budget in terms of like the fold, because as we know from certain other fantasy shows that shan't be named, I guess it's very hard to make things visible in the dark. So it was nice to have a place that is like literal darkness still be well lit enough to be able to see what's going on. And I appreciated that with Shadow and Bone. So hopefully, hopefully they're given a larger budget, because apparently they actually had a pretty small budget this year or this season. Hopefully they're able to utilize that budget more on things other than the fold. Because there were some times where I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's hardcore CGI right there. Like I understand that, budgetary wise, that why it looks like that, but like fix that later with more budget. But yeah, like I wish I know budget was another reason why there was only 8 episodes instead of 10. And I know they said they wanted to they shortened it down to 8 because if they'd done it 10, they would have had to stretch the budget out more. And so they wanted to have it be 8 so they can do more with what they were given. So I get that, but I hope that next season, hypothetical season, I'm trying not to jinx it. Next hypothetical season, that they're able to get a higher budget so they can like really strengthen a lot of the CGI and everything. So those are my critiques: Melina, Zoya, Nina, and budget.
All good things. All good things.
Yeah.
I talked at the beginning that Netflix says that they want, at least 4 seasons, and we'll see what they get. Hopes for season 2 and beyond is our next thing. And I know I sent you a message. I actually just scrolled up in our DMs about it while I was watching it, and I said I'm 4 episodes in now, and my main thing is give me an Inej, Kaz, and Jesper show.
Yes.
Period. And I know obviously we're going to be getting, if they season 2 plus comes along, that we'll be getting more of them. But I mean there's so much that I could imagine just having them in their own show of like, let's do a heist every couple episodes, and let's be cool, and let's go drinking and having like random meetups with people, and seeing what trouble we can get into. But what are some of your hopes for future seasons?
So again, I make no secret, and I'm not coy about the fact that I vastly prefer the Six of Crows duology over the trilogy, and that I mean like wholeheartedly. But a lot of fans do like that the duology, varying stages of more than the trilogy. But I hope that I feel like the way it integrated this season was so spot on, but I don't know how it could work more than once. Kind of hope, and again, the second book in the trilogy is probably one of my least favorite books I've ever read in my life.
Ooh.
Season Storm, I do not like that book at all. Now, it does seem like there's a lot of stuff that they're going to fix, but they've already kind of started fixing in the show this season that would impact a lot of the negative stuff from the second book. So I'm hoping that that's a good trajectory, that they're just going to scrap a lot of the second book, because I do not like that book at all. I was screaming at it the whole time. But because of that, I'm a little bit nervous of the Crows still being involved in that plot line. And so I'm hoping that they kind of do their own thing, because I think that, based on fan reaction, it's kind of obvious that the Crows can stand on their own. with fans and with viewers in general. So I think that as long as they kind of like tie it in a little bit and don't leave it as disconnected as they did with Nina and Matthias this season, I think that they can still make it work enough that the Crows aren't so dependent on Alina's storyline as they were in season one. And Alina can kind of have her own plot line with the trilogy books. Now, I highly doubt that's going to happen because I know that the Crows were a huge pull this season, and I doubt that Netflix is going to just let them go and let them go off too much and do their own things. They are cash cows, cash crows. But like, I hope that however they integrate their plot line with Alina's second book plot line, it's better than Alina's second book. And I again, the bar is in hell with that. So really, really, they can do a lot and still get it semi right. But I'm hoping that eventually you get to the point where, because I don't see the Six of Crows plot itself, which is an ice heist, an ice court heist is what the first book is dealing with. I don't see that happening next season. I feel like there's still a little bit of loose ends. Like I think we're going to see another Kaz versus Darkling issue come up because they left that hanging a little bit. So I doubt that they're going to leave that hanging some more. But I hope that they're able to do their own things, both the trilogy characters and the duology characters, because the stories get so rich and so crowded that I don't want them to have to share anymore.
Right.
Because it'll be doing a disservice to both plots, really. So I'm hoping that they find a way to just lightly integrate the Crows into the trilogy plot, but let them do their own thing in Ketterdam, because they got a lot going on in Ketterdam that they set up this season with Pekka Rollins and Tanta Helene and Dreesen, and now the Darkling's probably pissed off. So they got a lot going on over there. And I don't want that to be overcrowded next season with Siege and Storm's hopefully better plot. That's just not my favorite book at all. And so we always talk about, we're always like, I would hate for Six of Crows as a book to have to share time with Siege and Storm as a book, because that is just, it's like best of times and worst of times through and through. But I'm hoping that they get more into Kaz's backstory, which is so good. I feel like this season a lot of like the attention went to Jesper, who was awesome. And like a lot of like viewer attention went to Jesper because he's got such a dynamic personality. And Inej, because she does like this really cool stuff. I feel like I'm not seeing as much like hype behind Kaz as I think he deserves. Because he's actually, I think, my favorite Grishaverse character, hands down. Like he edges Inej out just slightly for me, because he's just such an interesting character. So I hope that they flesh him out some more too, even more than they already did, but just like show a lot more about his personality, other than his cold exterior. And I hope that, I'm so interested in seeing what they're going to do with Inej's brother. Well, she didn't have a brother in the books, so I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that plot line, because it's really interesting. In terms of like new characters coming in too, there's a character, Nikolai, who is he's my favorite Grishaverse or Grisha trilogy character. He's so funny. Like I always say, he's like to the Grishaverse what Finnick Odair was to the Hunger Games. He's just like this boisterous, cocky, but good-hearted guy, and I love him. And he's set to come in next season. for that. He adds so much to the trilogy plot. Like I'm very excited for him. And on the Crow side, Wylan is gonna come in, and he is just I call him he's like a baby Kaz, but in the sweet, like he's like Kaz if Kaz didn't have all the awful. He's what Kaz would have grown up to be if he didn't have all the awful things that happened to him. He's super sweet, but he's quick minded, really smart. He's a demolitions expert, which it kind of hinted at this season. When Jesper kept asking for a demolitions expert, and the bombs that Kaz used to throw at the Darkling, they hinted that was a Wylan creation. So I love all the teasers that's coming in with him. But yeah, he's like a cinnamon roll version of a baby Kaz, and I'm so excited for him to come in. So I'm excited for the new people that are going to be coming in. I'm excited for some of like the backstories. I'm excited for the plots that they added in that I'm like very intrigued by. So I'm hoping I wanted to get a second season. I wanted to get more than a second season. I wanted to do really well. And as of today, it's been the number one show on Netflix worldwide for 12 days. So hopefully that bodes well for it getting future seasons. But you never know with Netflix. I mean, at this point, if they were to cancel it, like they're just throwing money. They're throwing money out the window at that point because it's been making a lot of noise. So I'm really, really hoping that it continues on. Because this cast is probably one of my favorite cast ensembles that I've ever seen. They're all sweethearts. They're all best friends. They're all just like so passionate about this series, and like it makes you want more for them, and makes you want more seasons because of them. So my hope is that there are more seasons, and that they get to all the things that make the Grishaverse, which I do have confidence after the season that they could do. So we'll see.
Well, if somebody's listening to this, which I'm not sure how you listen to this episode with all the spoilers that we've thrown out, and you haven't watched Shadow and Bone, but why should you watch Shadow and Bone even if it's not your thing?
It's one of those shows that it's just fun. You know, it's a great escape. It gives you commentary where it needs to, but it's a great escape. You know, it's one of those shows where it's got lore behind it. It's got characters to dive into. Like the season itself is just an amuse bouche. Like it's just a taster of this world that's so rich and so vast and interesting that you can dive into. And there's so much heart that went into making this series that you can see it when you're watching it. Like you can see the people had fun watching it, or they had fun making it. And so I have fun watching it. I've watched it with multiple people at this point who weren't familiar with the series. And they kept up well, and they enjoyed it. And I mean friends who aren't really that into fantasy series, definitely not into young adult novels. But don't even look at that. Don't look at it as YA or as a fantasy novel if that's something that's going to be a turnoff. Look at it as a really fun show that makes you want to dive into all the extra info that there is on it. And I highly suggest following all the cast members because they will make you love it even more than you already would. But yeah, just give it a chance, give it a shot. It's 8 episodes. It's a quick watch, and it feels like someone commented saying that it feels like you're watching an 8-part movie, and I get that now. Before I was like, but now I get that because each episode that, like you said, there's no filler episode. There's no like, oh man, gee, this sure is dragging a lot. You sit down when you want to, you watch it, and you just enjoy yourself. You know, we need more shows that you just are enjoying yourself. You're enjoying the characters. You're enjoying the world and the plot, and you're just having fun. Like, have fun with Shadow and Bone. Don't worry about writing an essay on it. Like, you're not going to write your dissertation on this show, so don't go into it thinking it. It's not. It's not the next Game of Thrones. It's not The Witcher. It's not Twilight or The Hunger Games. Like, it's Shadow and Bone, and it's interesting on its own, and it's fun on its own. So give it a shot. Give it a shot, even if it's not your thing.
Absolutely. And you could do a lot worse than Shadow and Bone,
Oh my
and then
word!
you'd regret it. Like, you'd be like, why did I spend 8 hours watching this when I could have watched Shadow and Bone?
Exactly. I'm like, think of all the horrible adaptations there are out there. This is not one of them. This is one that you're gonna be like, oh, okay, this is actually good. This was actually enjoyable. I did not waste my life doing this. Like, you're not gonna sit there on your deathbed and be like, sure wish I could have had those 8 hours back in my life that I wasted watching this show. This is not that show. I think anyone can enjoy this, can find something to enjoy. There are enough rich characters, there are enough various characters and various plots. You're gonna find something in there to latch onto and enjoy. Probably the crows.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I do have to say, I am not like a cosplayer person, just because it doesn't work for me on sad face, sad face. Uh, I would rock a kefta if it was something like, but I know that those are so detail oriented. I was like, I love it.
Yes, yeah. That's one of those things where I'm like, bless all the cosplayers that are going to be cosplaying Grisha, because I would love to cosplay Jinya so much, but embroidering scares me to death. So I I would not do that, but I cannot wait to see all the cosplay. I've already seen like some people working on the Kefta cosplays, and I'm just like, you guys are beyond brilliant. Wow. Wow is basically my reaction to them. I am working on Inej, and I had to paint this design on her sleeves, and that already was enough for me. I said, I can't do this. I'm like, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. So bless all of you guys making keftas and doing all that beautiful embroidery that the show just went all in on.
Exactly. Now, Reina, hopefully we get a season 2, probably next year if we're being optimistic about it.
Hopefully.
Crossing fingers. But until that time, you've been a guest on many of these podcast thingies here that I happen to do on occasion. And I would like to, if people haven't listened to your previous episodes or haven't checked you out and they're like, hey, that Reina person sounds really cool, where can I find her? Where can people find you out there in the great wide world of the internet?
As I always say, I have different personalities on different platforms. Well, I have different uses on different platforms. So if you want to just follow my costumes and see what I'm up to costume wise, follow me on Instagram at Reina Valentine Cosplay. And that's where I will post like works in progress, and I'll post just kind of like what I'm up to in terms of costume making. If you want to see a little bit of costume making, but mostly me yelling about various things that I'm into or not into, you can follow me on Twitter at Reina Valentine. And that one's definitely a little bit more of my thoughts and inner workings than any kind of like skill that I have. But that's definitely one to check out if you're into rants, or if you're into learning about new series like Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows. And also I'm on Facebook every now and then at Reina Valentine Cosplay. So Instagram and Facebook, Reina Valentine Cosplay for costumes. Reina Valentine on Twitter for rants and yelling.
Awesome. Well, I'll have the links to all of your socials on this episode, along with links to the episodes that we've previously done, where we've talked about The Witcher and Cowboy Bebop and Game of Thrones and
Mhm.
cosplay and
Mhm.
DC fandom and Dragon Con and all sorts of other stuff.
Yep.
But
Yep.
for now, Reina, like here we are. This is your fourth episode with
Yes.
me.
And I've enjoyed it. You let me rant, and I appreciate that so much. I just talk your ear off every time.
Well, I love it, and I love having you on. I'm always like, where can Reina come in next? Like, what's going on with Reina? Let's just check her Twitter timeline and see what she's into now. Oh, there's another series. Okay,
Yes. There's always another series.
there's always another series. Well, people that are listening, read the books. Reina's available on Twitter. You can send her a message like as you're reading them or as you're watching the show and be like, I agree with you or I disagree with you.
Yes.
And Reina's available for like great discourse and conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
go check Reina out. She's awesome.
Yay! Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.